Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Hope everyone is having an awesome week. And welcome to another Tip Tuesday where I go live and talk to you all about a biz money tip. So today's Tip Tuesday is actually all about our very favorite thing, which is taxes, right? And the IRS. People love the IRS, right? We're excited to talk about this. Probably not, but I'm here to talk about this today because this is a really important topic, especially after the tax season we just had. So for folks who are watching this live or fairly recently, it's May of 2021, and we've just come out of one of the hardest tax seasons ever in existence, the 2020 tax season. And it was hard for a number of reasons, but the biggest reason really was because of the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic. There were a lot of tax law changes. There were a lot of delays. There were just a lot of things going on and changing and happening. And so it was a really tough tax season. And so the reason I wanted to come to you today and talk about the topic we're going to talk about is because especially after a tax season like this, it would not surprise me if a lot of people get notices from the IRS. Now, we're going to talk about all about this, okay? So we're going to talk about what a notice is and what it means when you get one and what to do when you get one. But notices are actually a fairly routine thing. I hate to say, like, I know people freak out when they get notices, but notices are actually a fairly common thing to have happen. And they can happen any year, not just in 2020, not just when a year has been a tough year. They can happen all the time. But I think especially with 2020 being as challenging as it was, and with so many different rules and people getting really confused about it, I just suspect that there are going to be a lot more notices coming. So today's training is all about what to do if you get a notice from the IRS. And by the way, I'm going to say IRS throughout this whole training, but this actually all applies if you get a notice from the state as well. So everything I'm going to say for the most part is applicable whether it's the IRS or it's the state. So I'm going to dive in a second, but before I do that, if you're here watching me live, I definitely want to know, please drop a hello or a hey there in the comments. And also tell me if you can't hear me. I see a bunch of folks watching live and nobody said we can't hear you yet, so that's good. But let me know because I never know, and I would not want to talk for 20 minutes and then find out y'all can't hear me. So I'm going to pull up my phone over here just to keep an eye on comments and everything as well. So let me just do that real fast, but I want to make sure that we're all good before we dive into the training. So, all right. We've got it up. Everything looks good. I can see y'all live. Hey there. All right. And as I go through, if you'll have any comments or questions, drop them in the comments as well. I'm happy to answer them live for you. So let me pull this down. Let me go ahead and share my screen because I want y'all to see what we got going on here. I also don't want my little background to be my body. Okay, so what do you do if you get a notice from the IRS? Let me just pull this back here. Hold on, y'all. All right, please post your questions in the comments. Okay, so first and foremost, we are not going to panic. You're going to take a deep breath if you get a notice. Now, I'm going to tell y'all, in fact, I'm actually a little embarrassed. I meant to, you know what? I meant to scan this in and I forgot, but we're going to do this real fast right now while I talk because I actually got a notice from the IRS and I wanted to show you all this. So hold on. I am going to scan this in while we chit chat because I completely forgot to do it, but I'm going to show you all this so that you can see that a notice is actually not the scariest thing in the world. So like I said, first and foremost, do not panic. Okay, notices, I said this at the beginning, but notices from the IRS are actually not that unusual. They're fairly commonplace, and I know that that may sound scary, but if you get through your entire life and you never get a notice from the IRS, it probably is because you're not filing your tax returns and you're off the grid. So this is a fairly common thing, and it's best if you are prepared to deal with it. Well, I shouldn't say most. I don't actually know the numbers, but my gut tells me that the most notices are fairly benign, meaning you either don't actually owe any money or, well, yeah, that you don't owe any money, that they're usually just information requests. Let me just pull this over to my phone because I want to show y'all one of these because I think it would be super helpful. Now I'm going to have to redact the information really fast, but I'll do that in a second. So first and foremost, we're not going to panic. I was about to say we're not going to breathe. That's the wrong thing to say. We're not going to panic. We are going to breathe. And then we're going to follow the steps I'm going to outline for you here so you're going to know exactly what to do if you get a notice. The second thing, and I cannot stress this enough, is do not ignore this notice, y'all. I have talked to so many people who say, I got a notice and I didn't really know what to do with it. And I kind of just figured that if I ignored it, it would go away. I can tell you this, it's not going to go away. What makes people think this, if you're sitting there being super judgy and going, oh, well, how stupid of people to think that. What makes people think this? First of all, anyone who thinks this is not stupid. Anyone who thinks this is not stupid. What makes people think this is the fact that a lot of times what will happen is someone will get a notice, they won't respond to it, and then they won't hear from the IRS for months and months and months, sometimes even a year or more. And so they'll think, oh, okay, all right, I think we're okay. And so that's why reasonably people think that they can just ignore it. But the problem is the IRS is just really freaking slow. They're really freaking slow. So it is not unusual for them to send a notice and then not hear anything from them for a year plus. That has happened a lot. This is taking a while to download, so we're gonna keep going. But I do want to show you this notice. So don't ignore it. It is almost always going to get, not almost, it's always going to get worse if you ignore it. It's not going to go away. I can promise you that. Let me pull up where the heck are my slides? Pull up my slides here. I just lost my slides, y'all. Oh my goodness. We are not doing well today. We will find them eventually. There we go. Nope, that's not it. Oh my goodness, y'all. Eventually we'll get there. Lordy Lord. All right, hold on. I'm going to stop my share for a second. I don't know where they've hidden. They're somewhere on my multiple desktop screens. I've lost them. So because I was trying to do too many things, I was trying to be super fancy and show you all my notice. So let me do this. Let me just share again. It knows that I'm sharing. That's so funny. It just won't tell me where it is on my screen. We're going to get our act together, I promise you. Let's not share the screen. Okay. All right. So, we don't want to start at the beginning. All right. Don't ignore it. I want to just run through really quickly the types of notices that you can get, because there are a bunch. Now, I put this list on the screen. This is one of those lists that makes me cringe because it's got a lot of numbers and a lot of letters, and nobody's going to remember this. But this is actually just a sampling of the notices that you could get, but it's the most common notices that you could get. So I want to run through these real fast. So probably one of the most common notices that you can get is the CP2000, which sounds like something out of Star Wars, but it's not. It's an IRS notice. And this is a notice of proposed adjustment. And as you can see in my little note there, this is not a bill. So this is actually the notice that I'm going to show you all that I got. And this is where the IRS is basically saying, we think something was wrong on your return, and we think your tax liability should actually be this number instead of the number you told us. And so we are proposing an adjustment to your tax return. Now, this isn't always in their favor. Sometimes this is in your favor. Sometimes you'll get one of these and it'll say, we actually think we owe you more money. But what's important to know about this type of notice is this notice is not a bill. So if you get this, it does not mean that you have to pay this amount right now. What it means is you have to decide if you agree with their adjustment or not. And if you agree with their adjustment, you can say, I agree with this, and you can go ahead and pay it if you want. If you do, not if you want, you do have to pay it if you agree with it. If you don't agree with it, you can respond and say, this is why I don't agree with it. Okay, so that's CP2000. That's one of the most common notices. The CP14 is the notice of a balance due. Now, this is actually a bill. So this would be like if you filed your tax return and it said you owed $2,000 and you only paid $1,000, you're going to get a CP14 that says, hey, we would like you to pay us that other $1,000 that you owe. This is a bill. You need to pay it. It's going to give you a deadline by which to pay it. The CP2501 is what's called a tax return discrepancy. And this is where the IRS is saying, we have a discrepancy in our records from something you reported on your return. So this could be, excuse me, this could be if, I want to think of a good example for this. This could be like if somebody filed a 1099 on your behalf and you put a different number on your return than they had on that 1099. There would be a discrepancy there. so it's really like, it's stuff like that, where basically the IRS is saying there's a discrepancy between the information we have and the information you told us, you know, we should have or should be the case on your return. So that's what that one is. All right, now let me, hold on. I'm getting a bunch of comments and dingy things coming up, so hold on. Okay. So if you get the CP 2501, usually the deadline to respond is 30 days from the date of the notice. So you will want to contact the IRS immediately to explain the difference. And I want to be clear here. Just because they've said there's a difference doesn't always mean that you owe more money. You may be able to explain away this difference, okay? So you may write back and say, actually, you know, this number was corrected and I don't think you received the corrected 1099 or whatever it is. So you may be able to explain it. But the most important thing with this one is you need to respond timely and explain it. If you don't, they're going to assume that their number is correct, and whatever the answer means because of that number is what they're going to go with. So you need to contact them. They'll tell you how to contact them in the letter or in the notice, and usually you've got about 30 days to do that. Now, the next type of notice is the CP01, and this is the identity theft notice. This is the one that scares people when they get it. Not that many people get it, thankfully, but when you get it, because this is when you get this when the IRS has put an identity theft indicator on your account. Now, this does not necessarily mean that your identity has been stolen. This could be if someone tried to file a tax return using your information. You know, so it's not good if it happens, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you've lost money. It doesn't necessarily mean that they've stolen your bank account or anything like that. It just means that the IRS has detected some kind of activity that concerns them when it comes to identity theft, and so they put an indicator on your account. What that means is they are going to monitor your account to prevent future fraud. Typically, if this happens, they are going to send you, and this may be in the notice, you may get it separately, they are going to send you what's called an Irs Protection Pin. I think it's Personal Identity Protection Pin. And that PIN number you will then need to put on your return every time you file a tax return, so that you're basically saying to the IRS, hey, it's me, see, because I'm using my personal identity protection PIN. So that's kind of like your code number, if you will, okay? Now, then there are a series of letters I want to talk about. So letters are different than notices. Letter 12C is an information request. This is very, very common. This is not at all unusual. And a lot of states have a similar version to letter 12C. This is basically the IRS saying, hey, we need more information. There's something on your return that we need more information about. It could be as simple as a signature was missing. It could be a form in the return that was missing. It could be a verification of income. I got one of these when, actually, it may not have been a 12C. This might have been a CP 2501. But I got one of these probably about 6 months ago when they thought I hadn't reported some income, or they were asking if I had reported some income because they had a 1099 and I had reported it. I had just included it in my business income. And so they just needed verification of that income. So that's what they're asking for. They usually will give you a fax number so you can send them this information ASAP. I recommend doing that ASAP. By the way, I also recommend using a fax service where you can get a printout of the fact that you sent that fax, so that it'll say like this fax was sent on this day at this time. Keep that. That's your record that you've sent them information. If you send anything by mail, which they may also give you that option, make sure you send it certified so that you get proof of mailing, okay? But this is an information request. More often than not, these information requests turn out perfectly fine. They just needed a little bit more info, and then you're good. Letter 3391 is a 30-day non-filer letter. So this is sent by the IRS. This is a bit more serious. Sent by the IRS if they are missing tax returns for certain years. So they will send this to you, and what they will do in this letter is they will say, we are computing the proposed amount due for the year. Now, they are calculating that based on W-2s or 1099s that they've received. Spoiler alert, probably not a shock to everybody out there, but when they're doing the calculation for you, they're not going to be favorable to you. So they're not going to consider the fact that you maybe just bought a house and have a ton of mortgage interest, or that you gave a ton to charity and can deduct that. They're going to go with the basic tax situation, if you will, given the information they have. So the standard deduction, like they're not going to take the student loan deduction for you, none of that. They're going to take the basic situation. So if you get one of these, what's really important is that you respond, and you want to respond and say, actually, I disagree with your calculation, and here, and here's why, blah, 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 blah. So typically with these 30-day non-filer letters, you have 30 days to respond, and you can either agree to what they've calculated and sign it and return it. And if you do, great, consider your tax return filed. If you disagree, they'll explain to you exactly what you need to do to follow up. By the way, the answer, when you get one of these, the answer isn't necessarily to go quickly file your tax return, because sometimes that actually throws things off. They'll tell you very specifically what they want you to do in the letter if you disagree, okay? And we're going to talk about this in a couple of slides, but by the way, it's okay to disagree with the IRS. The IRS is not always right. So don't feel like just because they've sent you a notice, scary looking as it is, that you have to agree with them. All right, so letter, the next one, letter 2205 is sent to you when your return has been selected for examination. So examination is a fancy word for audit. And yes, I know audit scares the bejesus out of everyone, but I will tell you there are different degrees of audits. Some audits are usually very, very basic, and they just need some information. And a lot of times it's actually only focused on a portion of your return, not necessarily the entire return. And it can be handled pretty easily by providing the documentation they request. Other audits, when they do like an office or a desk audit, requires actually sitting down with the IRS agent. It's a bit more thorough. Still not necessarily a bad thing. It may not end with you owing money. Not all audits end with people owing money. Believe it or not, IRS agents are not out to get money from you. They're out to make sure that the return was prepared correctly. If you don't believe me, there is, and you can Google this and it's mind-numbing, but there is an IRS audit procedures manual that is like thousands and thousands and thousands of pages long, and it dictates very clearly what agents have to do and what procedures they have to follow. So this is like not just an IRS agent trying to make a quota here. They don't have those. It's not like that, okay? But if you get this letter, it is serious. You need to pay attention to it. It'll usually include, not usually, it will include the name of the person who's doing the examination. It'll include their contact information. It'll also let you know what issues are being reviewed. I just said that a couple of seconds ago, they may not be looking at your entire return. They may just be looking at a portion of it. So if they're only looking at a portion of it, you only have to give them information related to that portion. They will request documents in this letter, so you want to start gathering those documents. They may request a meeting with you. They may not. It depends on kind of the severity and the nature of it. If they request a meeting with you, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It doesn't mean you're screwed or in trouble. It just may mean that the nature of what they're asking about is a bit more detailed, and it would be easier to conduct the audit in person, okay? Now, letter 525 is an examination report. And I see your question. Let me get to you in 1 second. Is an examination report. This is the report they give you after they've done that audit. It includes any proposed changes. They may not have any proposed changes. If they have any, they'll be in this report. You usually have 30 days to accept them or dispute them. All right, I want to bring this question over. What if you get the CP 2000 and send them the requested information and you owe more, but they don't get back to you with what your balance is for a year? Do you have to pay the extra late fee since they took a long time getting back to you? This is an interesting one. So I noticed your other comment that it may not be the CP 2000, which is fine. It doesn't change my answer if it was the 2000 or something else. So the short, frustrating answer is yes. And here's why. We all owe tax as we earn income. And I've said this before when I've talked about quarterly tax payments, but we owe tax actually as we owe tax on income as we actually make the income. So if I make $1,000 today, technically I owe tax on that $1,000 today. The IRS has said that would be really freaking complicated to make you pay tax every single moment that you earned income. So instead of making you pay every single day, we're going to actually give you grace periods and basically only require you to pay tax in on a quarterly basis. That's our quarterly estimated tax payments. The end of the year tax return is when we file the reporting of all of that. And in theory, we're supposed to have fully paid in by the tax return, right? By April 15th. So even if you get a notice a year later and then another, and you contest it or you send them the requested information and then they tell you you owe more and that comes another year later, you technically do owe those penalties because in theory, you owed that tax. It was never the case that you didn't owe that tax. It was just the case that when you did your tax return, you didn't realize you owed that tax, but you always owed the tax. So the short answer is, yeah, you do owe the penalties. The slightly longer answer is you might be able to get out of them. There are a few different ways you could do this. Depending on if you actually have an agent assigned to your case, you could potentially talk to that agent, see if they'll waive them. If you don't, you could call and try to see if they'll waive them. I will tell you right now, the IRS is inundated with phone calls. They're like hanging up on people. They're not taking calls, so good luck. You can also file for a waiver of penalties. It's a lot easier to get that approved when you file for it with your return than years later. But let me just see. If I can't find it quickly searching right now, I will drop it in the comments after the live. But it's a first-time penalty abatement. So if you've never really asked for this before, you may get it approved. Here we go. I'm going to just put it right here. So let me see if I can. This isn't going to post everywhere because it doesn't let me post on all of our streams, but I will make sure I add it to the places that it's not posting. But it's basically a penalty relief for your first time, essentially. It's like basically saying, whoops. And essentially what you do is you call the number on your notice, and this is something they can ask for. I also will tell you, and you'll have to look at your notice, and if it's not a CP 2000, it may be in a different spot if it is on your notice. But on your notice, somewhere in here, it says what to do if you want to have your penalties waived. So I would look at your notice as well and see if it includes any information on that. But if not, check out the link that I dropped, and you could file for that waiver or abatement of your penalties. Again, assuming you haven't done that in the past. I'm just looking real fast to see. In fact, it's not even on mine, which actually doesn't. No, it is. It doesn't surprise me because I don't have penalties on mine. That's why. I only have interest on mine. And that's an important thing to note too. There are two components. There's penalties and there's interest. So interest comes up just based on time that you haven't paid. And it's really hard to get out of interest because again, you owed the money, even if you didn't realize you owed the money. Penalties are if you didn't pay on time or didn't file on time, and those are a little bit easier to get out of. So thanks, that helps. I'm really glad to hear that. Awesome. Okay, so our last two notices, just real quick, and then we're going to get to steps. Letter 3219, notice of deficiency. So this is when you have underpaid and you owe money on your return. You usually have a 90-day window. Now, this is typically not the first. You won't get this initially. You'll get the notice, you'll get CP 14 first, which is notice of balance due. This letter 3219 usually comes after you've gone through like an examination or an audit. You have a 90-day period to petition basically the tax court if you disagree with this. If you agree with the balance owed, you will send the full balance payment in. You'll also send what's called Form 5564, notice of deficiency waiver. You'll basically send it in and say, I'm good, let's call it a day, let's move on with our lives. And then last but not least, CP 90 is final notice of intent to levy. This one's not so great. If you get this one, please don't ignore it. If you get this one, it probably means you've ignored notices before this. So this notice you get when the IRS is basically saying, you owe us money, we've told you before you owe us money, and you haven't responded, so now we're gonna levy you. And the levy can be a variety of mechanisms. The most common is taking future tax refunds, but there are higher and higher levels of consequences as well, depending on how serious the issue is. You can appeal this within 30 days. You only have 30 days. You can appeal it by filing Form 12153, which is the request for collection due process hearing. But if you get this notice, please, please, please do not ignore it. It's a super serious one. All right. So I kind of said this before, and as I was talking about the notices, but common reasons the IRS will contact you. You have a balance due. You are owed a different refund amount than was shown on your return. That's not always a bad thing. Sometimes it's higher. The IRS has a question about your return. This is a very common one. The IRS needs to verify your identity. They need additional information, also very common. They're proposing a change in your return, somewhat common. the IRS is notifying you of a delay in processing your return. Probably more and more common, especially with 2020, we're seeing massive delays. So the IRS is not always contacting you for a bad reason. Most of the time, what I see with most of my clients, it's that they want more information or they're missing documentation. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. So what do you do when you get this notice? Number one, you're going to read it immediately. You're going to get it and you're going to go, I do not want to deal with this and I don't care. You're going to look at it. You're going to read it. You're going to go, I'm going to check this out now because if I don't, I'm going to forget about it and I need to know what my next steps are. So you're going to read it and you're going to first and foremost identify what type of notice it is. Is it asking for information? Is it asking for money? What is going on in the notice? Again, what type of notice it is determines how long you have to respond, determines what you're going to need to get together in order to respond. So it's really important to understand the type of notice. The second thing you're going to do is determine if any action is required. Sometimes action isn't required. If they send you a notice that your return has been delayed, the processing has been delayed, you don't have to respond. There's no action there. So you want to make sure you identify, do I need to actually take any action? Now, I'm going to show you this when I pull up my copy, but on the first page of the notice, and this is typically where it is. Every notice is a little bit different, but typically where this is, there is a section that says what you need to do immediately, and then it lists what I need to do, okay? So you're gonna wanna look at that section and read that thoroughly and make sure you understand it, and you're gonna wanna note any deadlines to respond. Step number 3 is to review the proposed changes, if there are any. If it's not a notice that's proposing changes, you don't have to do this, but if they are proposing changes, you're gonna review those. I'm going to show you this on mine, but on the second page of the notice, they say, here is what we're proposing, and they show you what I had, and they show you what they're proposing, so I can review it very easily and see what they're suggesting is different. Then you decide if you agree with it or not. If you agree, great, then you're probably going to, you're going to pay or you're going to do whatever they tell you to do. If you don't agree, then you're going to need to pay careful attention to what they tell you to do back on page 1. I know y'all can't see my thing yet, but back on page 1, what you need to do if you don't agree, okay? Step number 4 is you're gonna draft a response to them. Now, you don't need to be a lawyer to do this. You don't need to be a CPA to do this. You just need to very clearly state your information. It's not a bad idea. If you've got an accountant, call them. They'll do this for you. They'll do it a lot quicker than you'll do it, but you don't have to be a super expert to do this. You just need to respond like a human being and say, I received this notice number, blah, 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 for my 2018 tax return, 2018, Form 1040 tax return. You have indicated that these are the changes you suggest. I disagree with these because blah, 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 blah. Okay, so it does not have to be super fancy, but you're going to draft that response if a response is warranted. Again, only if a response is warranted. And you're going to also gather all the necessary materials. So if you've got any documentation or whatnot, I do recommend, like, let's say they request information. I do recommend drafting a 1-page letter that says, you've requested this information, I'm attaching this. That way, it's a lot harder for them to argue that you didn't send something in. I mean, a letter isn't 100% evidence, but it's a lot harder for them to argue that when you can say, here's the packet I faxed you. As indicated on the first page of this packet, I listed every document included. Okay, so that's what I would do for that. And then step number 5, you're going to send the requested information to them as soon as you can via the method they indicate. Pay very careful attention to how they tell you to get in contact. On mine, very specifically, it says to complete the response form on page 7 and send it to us, not fax, send it with a signed statement explaining the disagreement, blah, 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 blah. So I'm going to pay very careful attention to these specific instructions because they're telling me how they want to hear from me. You don't want to get cute and fancy and decide you're going to do something different, all right? Now, I do want to show you all let me see what my next slide is. I'm forgetting. Yes, let's look at an example. I had a feeling my next slide was the example. You need to give me a hot second because I do need to just really quickly redact my personal information. I should have done that before. I did not. Sorry. But I think this is going to be really helpful to see an example, assuming I can make these pages big enough. That is my only nit. So bear with me 1 second. Oh, Lordy Lord. Hold on. All right. And then meanwhile, while I'm doing this, if you all have any questions, put them in the comments. But I want to stress while I'm doing this, and I'm going to talk while I do this, is it is so important not to panic with this stuff. Like, I cannot stress that enough. I have talked to so many people who have ignored notices, and there's no shame. I'm not shaming you. I'm not judging you. I get it. This stuff is scary. It feels super scary, right? But ignoring it is never going to be the better answer. Yes, it's going to take a little brain power. That's never fun. We don't like to use too much brain power on stuff that isn't fun, like taxes. But they will come back, even if it takes them a year or more. Do not ever sit there and think, I haven't heard from them in a while, so I think we're good. You're not. I promise you, you're not. They're going to come back. So it's really important to make sure that you respond to that quickly. All right, I'm almost up and ready. Bear with me 1 second. Not that y'all would steal my identity, but you just never know. So you never know who's watching. We are redacting. Nope, we do not want to edit. My whole computer, so I'm at like the last days of the life of this computer. My new computer comes June 3rd. I'm so excited. But this one is just, it's hanging on. It's really struggling. So bear with me. Now everything's freezing because that's what happens. I'm going to close a bunch of stuff down. So, okay, I do not want to do that. I would like to redact. Let me stop my screen real fast so that I can pull up this version. We are going to redact that. Oh, what is that, y'all? Oh my gosh. All right. And I will tell you, this is actually the second notice. I'm going to show you this notice that I just got a few weeks ago. This is actually the second notice that I've gotten probably within 6 months for a different tax return. This is for 2018. I got one for 2019. And on my 2019 one, I actually disagreed with what they said. And so I responded. And it's funny, I have not heard back. I responded and have not heard back. And probably won't for many, many months. But they actually, I want to say they said I owed like $600 more on the 2019. And when I actually did my review, I realized that not only did I disagree with them, but that I actually thought that they owed me some money because I had made an error when I did the return. So again, the IRS is not always right. And I cannot stress that point enough. And that is why you should absolutely take the time to review your notice and like actually spend the time to look at it. Okay, we're almost rocking and rolling here. Bear with me 1 second. All right, I am ready to share my screen. Let me do this. My computer wasn't so slow today. All right. Now I'm just going to show you 2 pages. The actual notice is 1, 2, 3, 4 pages front and back. But the pages I'm not going to show you are just like kind of important information, but basic information. I just want to show you the important pages for the purposes of this. Okay, so I think you all can see my screen now, which is good. I'm going to take this banner off. I don't know if it's going to make that any bigger. It doesn't help. Okay, so this is the front page of my notice. So at the top, I can see it's come from the IRS, Department of Treasury. This is my mailing address that I redacted. Over here is some important information. So first of all, it's telling me what kind of notice it is. CP 2000, see that right there? It's telling me, so that's important. Now I know that this is a notice of proposed changes. That's the first thing. The second thing is it tells me the tax year it's for. This is also really important because you want to make sure when you're reviewing this that you're looking at the correct tax return to see what they're suggesting. So this is for 2018. Ironically, they sent this on my wedding anniversary, so not such a great anniversary present. Thanks, guys. And they do have a control number here. You may be asked for this control number when you call, so just keep that in mind. And they do put their contact information here as well, phone and fax. However, let me stress this. This may not be how they want you to contact them, okay? So you don't want to just contact them automatically when you see that. Now we come down to the good stuff. We are proposing changes to your 2018 Form 1040 tax return. So it's telling me the tax year and it's telling me what return, because I have business returns as well. This is about my personal return. And the proposed amount due, $204. Now the next thing I'm noticing is they are putting a date here, May 19th of 2021. Doesn't necessarily mean that I have to pay them the money or I'm going to be in big trouble, okay? They're listing here the tax I owe, but they're saying I actually paid $254 in And then they charged me interest of $17. So they're actually saying I only owe $204 left. So that's what they're proposing I pay them by May 19th. Notice here, I don't know if you can see this, it's kind of small. It says, reminder, this is not a bill. We haven't charged the proposed amount due. So I don't have to pay this yet. That said, if you agree with this adjustment, if you agree that you owe this money, they're going to charge you interest until you pay it. So if you agree, you might want to pay it. This section down here on the bottom of page 1 is the important section. What you need to do immediately. This is what you're going to look at the minute you get this notice. Even if you're not ready to deal with it, you're going to look at this so you know what you need to do. Now, the first thing they say here is if you need more time to respond to this notice, contact us at this phone number. I will tell you, it is hard to contact them, so don't count on this. Try to respond in the time they give you. They will say interest will continue to accrue during this period if the information on this notice is correct. So that's the piece right there. It's great that they're telling you it's not a bill and they haven't charged it yet, but they're still going to charge you interest on it if you don't pay it. So if you agree, you're going to want to pay it. So here's what they're telling you, excuse me, you need to do immediately. I don't know if y'all can read this. I'm going to try to zoom in a little bit. I know this is, I know it's kind of small. Does that help at all? Oh, I made that super big, didn't I? Woo, that is super big. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to review this notice and compare our changes, the IRS changes, to the information on your tax return. If you agree, you're going to complete, sign, and date the response form on page 7. And by the way, both people have to sign if it is a joint return, and mail it with the payment of $204 so we receive it by May 19th. Do not file an amended return. So they're telling you right there, don't file an amended return to show these changes. Do not do that. So you want to pay close attention to that because some of these notices may be very clear about that. Do not file an amended return, and that may be what you want to do, but they're saying please don't do that. Now, if you don't agree, they're saying complete the response form, but say you don't agree and send them a signed statement. It's got to be signed. So remember I talked about doing your one-pager explanation. Make sure it's signed, explaining your disagreement, and include any documentation that supports your claim so it's received by May 19th, 2021. Now, they say here, if you have allowable costs or expenses related to the unreported income, that will change our proposal. It may benefit you to include them when you respond. Again, it is not necessary to file an amended return if you disagree. However, if you choose to file an amended return, make sure you write the notice number CP 2000 on the top so that they know it. So this is what a notice looks like. Now I want to show you page 2. This is the other important page. So page 2 is actually showing me the changes that they're proposing. So shown on return is this column here. I don't know if y'all can see, my mouse is white, so it's kind of hard to see. As corrected by the IRS, and then the difference. So as you'll notice, and y'all are seeing my income now, which I probably should have redacted, but whatever, you've seen my income. Taxable income tax, what the item that they're disputing is credit for child and dependent care expenses. So I included a credit for that, and they're saying, you don't get that. Now, it's on me to then go, I'm going to pull up my 2018 return. I'm going to look and say, well, I think I'm entitled to that credit. I might pull up the rules for that credit, and I'm going to look and say, no, yeah, I think I'm entitled to that credit. And so I'll write them back and say, I disagree with you guys. I'm actually entitled to this credit, and here's why, okay? But as we follow this down, notice nothing else changed. The additional Medicare tax, which is a tax based on a certain level of income, that changed. So my total tax changed of $441. Remember, they said I actually had paid some in. So the amount that I showed of income tax that was withheld on my return was different than the income tax that they showed was withheld in my favor by $254. So that's how they get the $204. And so then down here, they'll kind of explain any other changes. And so in this case, it was actually Medicare tax. We had more Medicare tax withheld than we should have. And so it's getting applied to my return. Does that make sense? So this is what the notice looks like. And I know the IRS feels super scary, but I will tell you this, it's actually, the information they give you in these notices is actually really helpful. So I highly recommend, if you find yourself in this situation, to read your notice, to take the time to digest it, because I think you'll actually be surprised that the information is not, it's not written in Greek most of the time. Sometimes it is. I wanted to show you one more thing before we wrap up. I know this one took me a lot longer than our normal Tip Tuesdays, but I did really want to walk you through that actual notice and show you that. So while everything is taking forever, hold it. I'm working on it. It's coming. I just want to show you a couple more slides that I had because I wanted to give you some tips for what to do if you do in fact get a notice. So bear with me. We don't fully have our act together today, but we're getting there. If my computer would decide not to die today, that would be awesome. Everything is going so slowly. It's like doing that thing where it's like, and I can even see on my camera. So I don't know if I'm getting blurry for y'all. I'm trying to shut some things down while this happens because we got a lot going on. We got a lot. Hopefully this will help. Bear with me. Oh my goodness. Okay. All right. I just shut a ton of things down. So hopefully that helps. So let me just share these last couple of slides with you and then we can wrap it up. And just as a reminder, I am here every Tuesday with a different Tip Tuesday. So if y'all have any questions, if there's ever any topics y'all want me to go over, let me know. Put them in the comments. I'm happy to cover them. Okay, so we looked at the example. What if you can't pay? What if you get a notice and it says you owe money and you agree with it, but you're like, I can't pay this? You've actually got a few options. Number one, pay as much as you can. Believe it or not, that actually helps. Not only does it bring down the total interest you'll end up paying, but it's kind of like a sign of good faith, right? So that's actually can be helpful if you're going to try to negotiate with the IRS. You also could potentially apply for a payment agreement. And if you Google IRS payment agreement, it comes up pretty quickly. And their payment agreements are actually not that bad. The interest rate is not that high. It most often is actually better than a credit card. So if you know you can pay it, you just need time to pay it, that could be a way to go. And then lastly, you can submit an offer in compromise. This is what you would do if you just cannot pay this, even if you had time to pay it. You just can't. You just physically can't pay this. An offer in compromise is basically saying, I owe X, can I give you Y, and can we just call it? Whether or not they accept it is going to be based on your financial situation. So if you're making 6 figures and you're bringing in the bucks, they're probably not going to let you out of your payment. If you're really struggling, you're not employed, something like that, you have a better chance. So that's something to look at, but that's kind of a last resort. I would not jump to the offer and compromise. I would do everything you can to work with the IRS to try to get this paid, even if you have to pay it over time. It's going to be just better all around. It's going to be a lot easier to get that through. Now, a few tips. I've said this before. I'm going to say it again. Do not panic. Don't wait to review it. I cannot stress this enough. Again, a lot of these deadlines are 30 days. And by the way, they're 30 days from the date of the notice. This notice was April 19th. I did not get this notice until early May. And remember, my due date was May 19th, which means that by the time I got this notice, I had about 2 weeks to respond to it, which is not very much time at all. So please do not wait to review it. Don't reply unless it requires you to. The IRS really does not want to hear from you unless they're asking to hear from you. So if it does not require a response, please don't send them a response. It's just going to clutter up things. Really important, do not assume the IRS is right. This is the second notice I've gotten from them now out of 2 total notices. And on both notices, they're wrong. They're just wrong. So the IRS is not always right, and it is perfectly okay to disagree. The only downside of disagreeing is that if ultimately they are in the right, you still owe that tax. You will incur interest on it for all that extra time you took to disagree with it. So that's the only downside to it. Don't rush to call the IRS. So a lot of these notices can be handled without talking to the IRS, without calling them. So don't just grab the phone immediately and try to get on the phone. It's hard to get the IRS on the phone. I think that's stupid and awful, but that's just the reality of it. And it's even harder right now where everybody is calling. So don't just rush to get on the phone. Read the notice, see what it tells you to do. And if you can follow those instructions, follow those instructions. Also, don't fall for a scam. So the IRS will never, ever, 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 ever contact you via social media or text. And they will rarely contact you via phone or email. The only times that they will call you via phone or email is if you have already initiated communication with them. So for example, if you call the IRS right now, they're going to say, hi, we have a 3-hour wait. give us your phone number, we'll call you back. In that case, the IRS would call you. Or if you're under audit and you're working with an agent, that agent is going to call you. But otherwise, the IRS does not email you or does not send you phone number, does not call you via phone. So the IRS communicates with people via letter. That is how they get to you. So do not fall for a scam. There have been a lot of scams right now. In fact, I just had a client tell me she got something about, the IRS has noticed that this is wrong and blah, 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 blah. And she reached out to me and I was like, that's not us. Don't respond. It's a scam. It came to her via email. And then last but not least, do not throw out your notice. It's really important to keep records of everything you've received from the IRS as well as everything you send them. All right, I want to take this question real fast. If you do an offer in compromise, do they generally remove the interest and penalties and you still have to pay the taxes due? Or do they sometimes adjust part of the original amount tax owes due? So it's an offer in compromise for a total amount. So if you owe $2,000 in tax and $500 in interest and penalties, so $2,500 in total, you would be contacting them and saying, instead of paying you $2,500, can I pay you $1,500? So it's kind of a total amount thing. An offer in compromise is not just removing interest and penalties, or it's not one or the other. They're looking at the whole thing. But again, they're looking at what you're able to pay. So if your balance owed is $5,000 and you make $250,000 a year, you're probably not going to get an offer in compromise accepted. It just kind of depends. They actually have on their website a really handy calculator. Again, just Google IRS offer in compromise. Where you can basically put in like your expenses, your monthly like household expenses, whatnot. You put in what you owe, you put in what you can pay, and they'll tell you the likelihood of you getting accepted. They basically calculate an amount that is what they think you can handle every month based on your household expenses, and they'll use that to figure out the offer in compromise. Now, sometimes with the offer in compromise, you can do it where you just pay an amount up front. Sometimes you can do it where you pay the amount over a period of months. So you've got options there as well. So, all right, I think that's it for what I've got for slides. Well, of course, the last one, which is that I help people with this, right? So if you ever want to know more about my tax prep services, you can learn more by going to megkwheeler.com/tax. All of my clients hopefully know this, that if they get a notice, they send it to me. Most notices we're able to handle for free. If something's really in depth, then we can't. But generally speaking, we try to handle these things for free. So it's never a bad idea to have an accountant or a CPA on your side. So if you want to learn more, you can head to megkwheeler.com/tax. And I'm going to end it there because I know we've gone super duper long. I want to make sure I get to all the questions. So if anyone else has questions, feel free to put them in the comments. I will also circle back to this and check to see if there are questions after the fact. So if anybody's watching this on replay, I will get back to you. So definitely let me know. I'm going to give it just a few more seconds because I know there's a delay, but I don't see any questions. So thank you all so much. I will be back here again next Tuesday, of course. And just a reminder, if you are inside of my free Facebook group, the Badass Moneymakers, I do go live there every Thursday to do our weekly Q&A. I will be there this Thursday. And you can join by going to megkwheeler.com/group. And I hope to see you all inside the group on Thursday. Bye for now.